Let me ask you something, and be honest. When you watch someone hit a jackpot on YouTube, what do you feel? Excitement? Hope? A little jealous, maybe? Good. Because that feeling, that's the product. Not the slot machine, not the cards. You. Your hope is the product they're selling, and I bought it for 7 years before I finally hit big. Lights flashing, bells ringing, people clapping. I'd made it, except I hadn't. Because 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a back room being told my win was void. Void, like it never happened. And technically, they were right. But morally, we're about to get into why casinos exist in the space between technically and morally, and how that gap swallowed my money whole. So why am I telling you this story? Because if you've ever walked into a casino, if you've ever played online, if you've ever felt that rush when the symbols line up or the cards fall your way, you need to understand something that nobody tells you. The game isn't rigged in the way you think. It's so much smarter than that. It's legal, it's documented, it's in the terms and conditions you scrolled past without reading, and the reason you need to hear this isn't so you'll never gamble again. I'm not your mother. I'm not here to lecture you. You're going to do what you're going to do, but you deserve to know what you're actually playing. Because it's not blackjack, it's not slots, it's not poker. You're playing against a system that's designed to let you win just enough to keep you believing, and then take it back in ways that feel personal but are actually mathematical. And the difference between those two things, between feeling scammed and understanding you were never really in the game, that difference is what I want to give you today. Because I spent 7 years confused, angry, broke, and convinced I was just unlucky. And then I won, and then they took it. And in that taking, they accidentally taught me everything. Here's what nobody tells you about that moment when you hit a jackpot. Time doesn't speed up. It slows down. Way down. You're standing there and your hands start shaking, not because you're excited, but because your body knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. It knows this moment is dangerous because for the first time in maybe months, maybe years, you're not losing. You're winning. Big. And your entire relationship with this place, with these machines, with this habit, it all shifts. Suddenly, you're not the sucker. You're not the person feeding $20 bills into a machine that plays jingles while it empties your wallet. You're the exception. You're the reason casinos have to exist. Because, look, people do win. It happens. You're proof. I was playing at a mid-tier casino, nothing fancy, one of those places that tries to look expensive, but you can tell it's not because the carpet pattern is just a little too busy and the waitresses look tired. It was a Thursday night, which was my night. I'd go after my shift around 9 or 10, and I'd play video poker because I liked that I could make decisions. Slots felt too passive, too much like just lighting money on fire and watching it burn. Poker, even video poker, felt like skill, like I had some control. And maybe that was the first lie I told myself, but it's the lie that kept me coming back. I'd been going to this casino for about 3 years at that point. I knew the staff. I knew which machines were looser, which bartender would comp your drinks if you tipped well on the first one, which bathroom stalls had working locks. I knew the ecosystem. I wasn't some tourist wandering in off the street. I was a regular, and regulars, we told ourselves, had an edge. We knew things. We had systems. Mine was simple. I'd bring $200. I'd play quarter video poker, and I'd leave when I either doubled up or lost it all. Clean. Disciplined. Most nights I lost. Some nights I'd walk out with 300, 400, once even 600. And those nights made the losing nights make sense. You know? Because I was just building toward the big one. The hand that would change everything. That Thursday, I sat down at my usual machine, the one in the corner near the high-limit slots where it's quieter, where you can think. I ordered a whiskey soda. Not because I like whiskey, but because it takes longer to drink than beer, so you pace yourself better. And I started playing. First hand, Nothing. Second hand, pair of jacks, got my money back. Third hand, nothing. This went on for about 40 minutes. I was down to about $120 of my original $200. Nothing unusual. This was the pattern. You bleed slowly until you either hit something or you don't. And then it happened. I was dealt 3 sevens and a garbage card. I held the sevens, hit draw, and the fourth seven came up. 4 sevens on a quarter machine. That's not jackpot territory, but it's significant. It's like $800 significant. The machine made this sound, this ascending chime thing, and the screen froze with all 4 sevens glowing. And I felt it. That chemical dump your brain does when something good happens. Dopamine, serotonin, whatever. It was there, flooding my system. I'd hit before, small stuff, but this felt different. This felt like validation. But here's the thing about 4 sevens on video poker. It's not the top payout. Royal Flush is the top. 4 sevens is great, but it's not, call the manager, great. So the machine just added $800 to my credit total, and I kept playing. I should have cashed out. If you're smart, you cash out after any significant win and you take a walk. Let your brain reset. But I didn't. Because 800 doesn't change your life. 800 pays some bills, maybe buys you a weekend somewhere cheap. I wanted the life change. I wanted the story. So I kept playing. Bumped up to dollar hands instead of quarters. This is what winning does to you. It makes you brave in exactly the wrong way. I played for another 20 minutes, hovering between $700 and $1,000, not really gaining or losing, just existing in that space where you feel like the machine likes you, like you've got a relationship with it. And then I was dealt it. Ace, king, queen, jack of hearts, and a 3 of clubs. 1 card away from a royal flush. The royal. The hand that pays 40,000 coins on a 5-coin bet. I was betting $5 a hand. 5 coins at $1 each. If I hit that 10 of hearts, I'd win $40,000. Now, I need you to understand the math of this moment. A royal flush on video poker happens roughly once every 40,000 hands. Those are the odds. I'd probably played 100,000 hands in my 3 years of coming here. Maybe more. I'd never even come close. I'd seen other people hit them. I'd heard the music, seen the lights, watched the floor managers come over with their clipboards and their congratulations. But it had never been me. And now I was 1 card away. I pressed the button to hold the 4 hearts. The game asked me to confirm. I confirmed. The draw happened, and I will remember this for the rest of my life. That 10 of hearts appeared in the middle of the screen, and for maybe half a second, it was just a card, just a piece of digital graphics. Shirti. And then the machine understood what had happened, and it lost its mind. The music was so loud, like genuinely startling. The screen started flashing colors I didn't know the screen could make. The words Royal Flush filled the display, and the machine locked, just completely froze. And above it, this light I'd never seen turn on before, this beacon light on top of the machine started spinning red, and I just sat there. I didn't jump up, I didn't scream. I just sat there with my hand still on the button and my whiskey soda sweating on the little shelf, and I thought very clearly, this is actually happening. Yeah, people started coming over, other players first, because everyone in a casino is hyper-aware of jackpot sounds. They know what they mean. A woman playing slots 3 machines over came up and said, "Oh my God, did you just hit the royal?" And I nodded, because I couldn't really speak yet. And she said, "I've been coming here for 15 years, and I've never even seen one in person." And that made it more real. Someone else's witnessing made it real. The floor manager arrived maybe 2 minutes later. Nice guy. I'd seen him around. His name was Marcus. He looked at the machine, looked at me, smiled, and said, "Well, looks like it's your lucky night. Congratulations." He had a radio on his belt, and he called someone, said something about a royal flush on machine 73, and to bring the paperwork, and then he asked me if I wanted a drink while we waited. On the house. I said sure. I ordered another whiskey soda. I wasn't thinking about what I was signing yet. I was thinking about $40,000. But I was thinking about paying off my car. I was thinking about my credit cards. I was thinking about not having to work doubles for a while. I was thinking about being okay. A woman in a blazer showed up maybe 5 minutes later. She introduced herself as something, I don't remember her title, but she had a folder and an iPad. She asked to see my ID and my player's card. I gave them to her. She scanned my ID, typed something into the iPad, and then asked me to confirm my Social Security number. I gave it to her. This all felt normal. This is what happens when you win. They verify you, they pay you, you sign some tax forms, you leave. That's the story. She told me to stay at the machine and that she'd be back in a few minutes. She needed to process some things. Marcus stayed with me. We made small talk. He asked how long I'd been playing, if I came here often. I told him about my Thursdays, about how this was my spot. He laughed and said, "Well, you picked the right spot tonight." More people were standing around now, a small crowd, all watching, all imagining themselves in my seat. This is part of the show. Casinos want this. They want people to see winners. It creates hope. It creates the possibility in everyone else's mind that they could be next. It's marketing. The woman came back about 10 minutes later, and her energy was different. Not hostile, but colder, more formal. She asked if we could step into an office for a moment to complete the paperwork. I said sure. Marcus walked with us. We went through a door marked Employees Only, and down a hallway with fluorescent lights and concrete floors, very different from the carpeted, mood-lit casino floor. We entered a small office, just a desk and a few chairs, and a filing cabinet. She gestured for me to sit. I sat. She sat across from me. Marcus stood by the door. She opened the folder and pulled out a piece of paper. She slid it across the desk to me. She said, "I need you to look at this and tell me if you recognize it." It was a player's card application. My player's card application from 3 years ago when I first signed up. I said, "Yeah, that's mine. I filled that out when I joined." She nodded. She pointed to a section of the form, a checkbox with text next to it that was maybe 8-point font. She said, "Did you read this section before you checked this box?" I looked at it. Honestly, I couldn't even read it without squinting. It was dense legal text, the kind of thing nobody actually reads. I said, I probably skimmed it." She nodded again. She said, "This section states that in the event of a machine malfunction, all plays and pays are void. Do you remember agreeing to that?" And my stomach started to feel wrong. Not sick, just wrong. I said, "Sure, but the machine didn't malfunction. I hit a royal flush. That's not a malfunction." She tapped something on her iPad. She turned it toward me. It showed a screenshot of my machine's log, a bunch of technical data I didn't understand. She pointed to a line that said something like, "Error code 742 set, timestamp whatever." She said, "At the moment your draw occurred, the machine registered an internal error. It's minor. It didn't affect gameplay from your perspective, but technically, according to the manufacturer's specifications and gaming regulations, this qualifies as a malfunction." Which means, per the agreement you signed, the play is void. I just stared at her. I said, "What does that mean, void?" And she said, very calmly, like she'd said this before, "It means the win cannot be paid. The machine will be reset, and your credit balance will be restored to what it was before the hand was played." I felt something drop inside my chest. I said, "You're telling me I don't get the money?" She said, "I'm sorry, but that's correct. It's in the terms you agreed to." I looked at Marcus. He wasn't smiling anymore. He just looked uncomfortable, like he'd seen this before, and didn't like it but couldn't do anything about it. I said, "This is insane. I hit the hand. The machine paid it. You saw it. Everyone saw it." She said, "I understand this is disappointing, but the malfunction invalidates the result. This is standard policy across all gaming establishments. It's regulated by the State Gaming Commission. I asked to see a manager. She said she was the compliance manager, and this was her area. I asked if there was someone above her. She said I could file a complaint with the Gaming Commission, and she'd be happy to provide me with the paperwork. I asked if anyone had ever won a case like this. She didn't answer that directly. She just said that the terms were legally binding and had been upheld in court multiple times. I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 10. I was doing math in my head. How much time had I spent in this casino? How much money had I fed into these machines? Thousands of dollars, easily thousands, probably more than I wanted to calculate. And in all that time, all those losses, all those nights walking out lighter than I came in, not once did a machine malfunction in my favor. Not once did they call me into an office and say, "Hey, sorry, the machine was broken when you lost that $100. Here's a refund." Because malfunctions only count when you win. That's the secret. That's the fine print. I asked her, what happens if I refuse to accept this? She said very politely that security would escort me from the property and my player's account would be suspended. I asked what I was supposed to do with the credits still on the machine. She said I could play it or cash it out. The $800 I'd won from the 4-7s earlier was still valid, just not the royal, just not the life-changing one, just not the one that mattered. I left that office and I walked back to the machine. The screen had been reset. The royal flush was gone, like it never happened. The credit meter showed my balance from before the hand. They literally erased it. I cashed out. I took my slip to the cashier. I walked out of that casino with $940, more than I came in with. A winning night, technically. And I got my car and I sat in the parking lot and I cried. Not because I was sad, because I was angry, because I'd been so stupid, because I'd believed them. Now, here's where the story gets more complicated, because I didn't just accept this and move on. I couldn't. For the first few days, I was in shock. I kept replaying it in my mind, trying to figure out what I could have done differently. Should I have read the terms closer? Should I have refused to leave the machine? Should I have called a lawyer right there in the casino? But then, the shock turned into something else. It turned into research. I started digging. I wanted to know if this had happened to other people. And, oh man, had it. I found forums, Reddit threads, news articles, even a couple of lawsuits. This wasn't some unique situation. This was a pattern. Casinos across the country, across the world, really, were using the malfunction clause to void big wins. And they were getting away with it because the terms were legal. You signed them, you agreed, and even if you didn't read them, even if they were hidden in microscopic text, at the bottom of a form you filled out 3 years ago, you were bound by them. I found a case in New York where a woman hit a slot machine jackpot for $43 million. $43 million. The machine said she won. The screen showed it. There were witnesses. And the casino refused to pay, citing a malfunction. She sued. It went on for years. And you know what she got in the end? Nothing. Well, not nothing. They offered her a steak dinner and $200 as compensation for a $43 million win. And the court sided with the casino because the machine had, in fact, malfunctioned. Not in a way that was obvious to her, not in a way that affected her ability to play, but in a technical internal way that voided the contract. And here's the thing that really got me. Malfunctions are incredibly common. Every machine malfunctions. They're computers. Computers glitch. They have errors. They log thousands of tiny errors every day that don't affect anything visible, but they're there, in the code, in the logs, and if you win big, the casino can go back and find one. They can audit the machine, pull the data, and find some error code that technically invalidates your win, and you have no way to know. You're playing a game where the rules can change retroactively, based on information you don't have access to. I called the Gaming Commission. I filed a complaint. I explained what happened. They sent me a letter back 2 months later, 2 months, saying they'd reviewed my case and found that the casino had acted in accordance with state regulations. The machine had logged an error. The terms were clear. There was nothing they could do. They included a pamphlet about responsible gambling. That's when it clicked for me. This wasn't about one casino scamming one person. This was the system. This was how it was designed. Casinos don't need to rig the games in the traditional sense because they've rigged the contract. The odds are already in their favor. That's basic math. Everyone knows that. But even when you beat the odds, even when you hit that 1 in 40,000 hand, they have an escape hatch. They have a legal way to say no. And that escape hatch is written in language you didn't read, buried in agreements you signed without thinking, enforced by regulations that protect the house, not you. I want to take a second here and talk about what this does to your brain because this is important. When you lose in a casino, it feels bad, but it makes sense. You played, you lost, that's gambling. You understand the transaction. But when you win and they take it back, it creates this cognitive dissonance that's really hard to process. Your brain experienced the win. Your body released all those chemicals. You felt the joy, the relief, the possibility, and then it was erased. Not because you did something wrong, but because of a technicality you couldn't have known about or prevented. That's not just disappointing, it's destabilizing. It makes you question reality. For weeks after, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd be at work and I'd suddenly remember the way the 10 of hearts looked on that screen, and I'd feel it all over again. The win, the loss, the confusion. I'd lie in bed at night running through scenarios where I argued better, where I said the right thing, where I somehow got them to pay. I became obsessed with the injustice of it, and that obsession, that anger, it almost made me want to go back, because part of me felt like I was owed, like the universe or the casino, or someone had to make this right. And if I could just hit another big win, a clean one without a malfunction, then I'd be vindicated. Do you see how insidious that is? They took my win, and the psychological effect was that it made me want to play more, not less. More, because now I had unfinished business. Now I had a story that needed a different ending. That's the trap. The scam isn't just in the taking, it's in what the taking does to you afterward. I didn't go back, though, and I need to tell you why, because this is where the shift happened for me. About 3 weeks after the incident, I was talking to a friend about it, venting, telling the story again because I couldn't stop telling it. And he listened, and when I was done, he asked me a question that I wasn't expecting. He said, "Okay, but let's say they had paid you. Let's say you walked out with the 40,000. What would have changed?" And I started listing things. I'd pay off debt. I'd fix my car. I'd take a vacation. I'd have savings for once. And he nodded and said, "Okay, and then what?" And I said, "What do you mean, then what?" And he said, would you have stopped going to the casino?" And I didn't answer right away because I knew the answer. I wouldn't have stopped. If anything, I probably would have gone more, because I'd have proven to myself that the big wins were real, that they could happen to me. I'd have been chasing that feeling forever. He said, "So they actually did you a favor?" And I got defensive. I said, "How is stealing $40,000 from me a favor?" And he said, "They didn't steal it. You never had it. The malfunction voided the contract. It's not stealing if the contract was never valid in the first place. But here's the favor. They showed you the game. They showed you that even when you win, you don't really win. They showed you the truth, which is that the only way to win is to not play. And that's worth more than $40,000 if you actually learn it." I didn't want to hear that. I was so angry at him in that moment. But he was right. He was completely right. The casino had accidentally taught me the most valuable lesson. The game was never fair, not just in the mathematical sense. Everyone knows the house has an edge, but in the structural, contractual, legal sense. The game was designed so that even your wins could be taken back. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Once you understand that you're not playing against a machine or a dealer, but against a system that controls the definitions of winning and losing, you realize you're not a player. You're a participant in their profit model. Let me break this down in a different way, because I think this is the core of what I need you to understand. When you walk into a casino, you think you're engaging in a game of chance. You're putting money in, you're taking a risk, and sometimes you win, and sometimes you lose. That's the framework. That's what it feels like. But that's not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is you're entering a space where the rules are defined by someone else, where those rules can change based on conditions you can't see or predict, and where your consent to those rules was given before you fully understood them. Think about it like this. Imagine you're playing poker with friends. You all agree on the rules. 5-card draw, aces high, nothing wild. You play a hand, you win with a full house. You take the pot. Now imagine that after you win, one of your friends says, "Actually, I checked my notes, and at the beginning of the night we agreed that if anyone wins with a full house containing red cards, the hand is void." And you say, "We never agreed to that." And they say, "Actually, you did. It was in the house rules sheet I gave everyone when you walked in. You signed it, and you don't remember signing it, or maybe you do, but you didn't read it because it was 6 pages of fine print, and you just wanted to play cards." That's what casinos do. They bury the real rules in places you won't look, and then they enforce them selectively when it benefits them. And it's legal because you consented, you signed, you agreed. The fact that you didn't know what you were agreeing to doesn't matter. The fact that no reasonable person would read a 6-page terms of service document before sitting down at a slot machine doesn't matter. You're bound by it, and that's the scam. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying the specific people working at casinos are bad people. Marcus wasn't a bad guy. The compliance manager wasn't a villain. They're just employees doing their jobs within a system that was built long before they got there. The scam isn't personal. It's structural. It's baked into the business model. And that makes it harder to fight because there's no one person to blame. It's not corruption. It's policy. But here's what makes it even more complicated. Casinos aren't lying to you. They're not promising you anything that isn't technically true. The games do pay out. People do win. The odds are published. The math is real. If you play long enough, you will occasionally win. The slot machine will give you a payout. The dealer will bust and you'll take the hand. It's not a con game where the whole thing is fake. It's a legal game where the structure ensures that on average over time, the house profits. And most people understand that. Most people who gamble know they're probably going to lose more than they win. They're paying for entertainment. They're buying the experience of possibility. The scam, the real scam, is in the hope. It's in the way they architect your emotions. It's in the way they make you feel like you're one spin away, one hand away, one card away from everything changing. They let you get close. They let you hit 4 sevens, so you feel like 5 is possible. They show you other people winning, so you believe it could be you. They give you free drinks, so you stay longer. They design the space, so there are no windows, no clocks. Nothing to remind you that time is passing, and you've been here for 6 hours, and you've spent $400. They create an environment where losing feels temporary and winning feels inevitable if you just keep playing. And that feeling, that hope, that's what you're actually buying. The game is just the delivery mechanism. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine someone selling you lottery tickets, but the lottery is designed so that even if your numbers come up, they can say, "Sorry, there was a printing error on your ticket, so it doesn't count. You'd never buy a ticket," right? Because what's the point if they can just void your win whenever they want? But that's essentially what's happening. The difference is the void is hidden in the fine print, and it only gets activated when the payout is big enough that they'd rather not pay. After I stopped going to that casino, I started noticing the psychological patterns in myself. The way I'd think about money differently on Thursday nights. The way I'd justify spending $200 as entertainment budget, even though I'd never spent $200 on any other form of entertainment. The way I'd remember the wins in vivid detail, but the losses would blur together. My brain was doing exactly what the casino wanted it to do, emphasizing the positive, minimizing the negative, and keeping me in a state of hopeful anticipation. And I started seeing this pattern everywhere, not just in gambling. Lottery tickets, crypto, sports betting apps, even some video games with loot boxes. The same psychological architecture. Give people a shot at a big reward. Make the odds transparent enough that you can claim you're not lying, but obscure enough that people overestimate their chances and then create addictive feedback loops that keep them engaged. It's all the same thing. It's the industrialization of hope. There's this concept in psychology called variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and it's one of the most powerful tools for creating addictive behavior. The idea is simple. If you reward someone randomly, not every time they do something, but sometimes, unpredictably, you create much stronger engagement than if you rewarded them consistently. Slot machines are the perfect example. You don't win every time. You don't even win most of the time. But sometimes you do, and you never know when. So you keep playing because the next spin might be it. Your brain gets hooked on that uncertainty. That's why gambling addiction is so hard to break. It's not about the money, it's about the pattern. And here's what's really dark about this. The casino knows this. They employ psychologists. They study behavior. They optimize their machines and their environments to maximize the time and money you spend there. They know exactly what they're doing, and it's legal. It's business. And you can't even be mad at them for it in the traditional sense because they're not hiding what they are. They're a casino. Their job is to take your money in exchange for entertainment. You know this. You consent to this. The scam is just that the consent is more complicated than it appears. So, what's the lesson here? What am I actually trying to tell you? Because I'm not just here to complain about losing $40,000. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm trying to give you a framework for understanding what happened to me so it doesn't happen to you, or so that if it already has happened, you can make sense of it. The lesson is this: the house doesn't just have an edge in the math. The house has an edge in the contract, in the information, in the environment, and in your psychology. You are not playing a fair game, and you never were. And the moment you realize that, you have a choice. You can keep playing anyway, knowing that you're essentially donating money for the experience of temporary hope. Or you can walk away and put your hope somewhere else, somewhere where the rules don't change after you've already played. I chose to walk away, not because I'm morally superior or because I'm smarter than anyone else who gambles. I walked away because I got a gift. The gift of seeing behind the curtain. Most people who gamble will never win big enough to trigger the malfunction clause. They'll just lose slowly, steadily, and they'll never quite understand why they can't get ahead. They'll think they're unlucky, or they need a better system, or they just haven't hit their big win yet. But I got to see what happens when you do hit it. I got to see that the promise is hollow. And that knowledge freed me. I think about that night a lot. I think about the 10 of hearts appearing on the screen. I think about how real it felt. I think about standing in that office hearing the words void and malfunction and feeling my entire understanding of the situation collapse. And you know what I feel now when I think about it? Gratitude. Not for the casino. They can go to hell. But for the experience, because it taught me something I needed to learn. It taught me that systems are designed by people with interests, and those interests are not your interests. And if you don't understand the system, you will lose every time. This applies to so much more than gambling. This applies to contracts you sign without reading, terms of service you click agree on, credit card agreements, loans, insurance policies. Any situation where someone else has written the rules and you're just showing up to participate. Most of the time, those rules are designed to protect them, not you. And you won't know where the traps are until you step on one. So here's what I want you to take from this. If you're going to gamble, really understand what you're doing. You're not investing. You're not employing a strategy that will pay off. If you're patient. You're paying for entertainment. You're buying the feeling of possibility. And if you can afford that, if you can set a limit and stick to it and enjoy the experience for what it is, fine. I'm not judging you. But don't lie to yourself about what it is. Don't tell yourself you're going to win big. Don't tell yourself you have a system. Don't tell yourself that you're different from everyone else who's played that game. You're not. The math doesn't care about you. The machine doesn't know you. And if you do hit that 1 in 40,000 hand, if you do beat the odds, there's a chance they won't pay you anyway. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's the truth they don't want you to know. That's the fine print. That's the scam. Let me tell you what happened after I stopped going. For the first few weeks, I felt this weird emptiness. Thursday nights felt wrong. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd get off work, and I'd drive, and I'd realize I was driving toward the casino without even thinking about it. Muscle memory, habit. And I'd have to consciously redirect myself. Go to a movie, go to a bookstore, go home. Anything but there. And the dreams. I had dreams about that royal flush for months. I'd be back at the machine, and I'd hit it again, and this time they'd pay me. This time it would work out, and I'd wake up and feel the disappointment all over again. My brain was trying to rewrite the story, trying to give me the ending I wanted. But reality doesn't work like that. Reality is what happened, not what should have happened. But slowly, something shifted. I started noticing how much money I wasn't spending. $200 a week is $800 a month. That's almost $10,000 a year. I'd been doing this for 3 years. That's $30,000. And that's just what I was consciously budgeting for it. That doesn't count the times I went back and pulled out more money because I was chasing losses. I probably spent closer to $40,000 or $50,000 in that casino over 3 years, and I got some of it back, sure. Maybe I got half back in wins, maybe. But net, I was down tens of thousands of dollars, money I didn't have, money I could have used to actually change my life instead of fantasizing about changing it. I started putting that $200 a week into a savings account instead, just to see what would happen. And you know what? It added up. Fast. Within 6 months, I had almost $5,000 saved. Real money, money I could touch, money that wasn't dependent on a machine or a draw or a hand. It was just mine, and that felt better than any win I'd ever had at the casino. Because it was real, it was certain, it wasn't going to be voided by a technicality. I paid off my credit cards. I fixed my car. I started sleeping better because I wasn't staying up at night thinking about money, about what I'd lost, about what I could have won. I started feeling like a person again instead of a player, and that distinction matters. When you're a player, you're always in the game. You're always thinking about the next hand, the next spin, the next chance. Your life becomes this waiting room for the moment when everything changes. But when you're a person, you're just living. You're making decisions based on what you have, not what you might get if the cards fall right. I want to tell you about something that happened about 8 months after I quit. I was at a grocery store just doing normal stuff, buying food, and I ran into someone I recognized from the casino, another regular, guy named Tom, mid-50s, always played the penny slots. We'd talked a few times in passing, the way regulars do. He saw me and his face lit up. He said, "Hey man, where you been? Haven't seen you around in forever." And I told him, I said I stopped going, and he got this look, this mix of confusion and concern, like I'd told him I'd quit breathing. He said, "Why? Did something happen?" And I almost told him the whole story, the royal flush, the malfunction, the office, everything. But I stopped myself because I realized something in that moment. If I told him, he'd either think I was lying or he'd rationalize it, or he'd say I was just unlucky. He wouldn't see what I saw because he wasn't ready to see it, and he was still in it, still believing. So instead I just said, yeah, something happened. I realized I was spending money I didn't have on a game I couldn't win. And he laughed. Not meanly. Just like I'd made a joke. He said, "That's the whole point, man. It's about the thrill, the possibility." And I nodded and said, "Yeah, I guess it just wasn't thrilling anymore." And we said goodbye, and he went back to his life, and I went back to mine. And I thought about that conversation for days, because he said the thing. He said the quiet part out loud. It's about the thrill, the possibility. Not the winning, not the money, the feeling. He was paying for a feeling, and he knew it, but he couldn't admit it was a bad trade. Because if he admitted that, he'd have to stop, and stopping meant facing whatever he was avoiding by going there in the first place. That's what I was doing too. I was avoiding my actual life. I was avoiding the slow, boring work of building something real. I was avoiding the fact that I was paycheck to paycheck, not because I was unlucky, but because I was making bad choices. The casino wasn't the cause of my problems. It was the symptom. It was where I went to pretend that my problems could be solved by luck instead of discipline. Here's the thing nobody tells you about gambling addiction, or really any addiction. It's not about the thing itself. It's about what the thing does for you emotionally. For me, the casino was hope on demand. It was a place where, for $200, I could spend a few hours believing that everything could change, that I wasn't stuck, that magic was possible. And when you're working a job you hate, living in a place you can't afford, drowning in debt you can't pay off, that feeling is incredibly valuable. It's medication. It's anesthesia. It's a brief escape from the weight of your actual circumstances. But here's what I learned. Hope on demand isn't hope. It's distraction dressed up as hope. Real hope is when you're taking concrete steps towards something better. And you can see it working, slowly, gradually. Real hope is boring. It's putting money in savings every week. It's paying down debt. It's learning a new skill. It's doing the work that might pay off eventually. Not gambling on the big break that probably won't come. The casino sold me fake hope. Instant hope. Hope that felt good in the moment, but left me worse off afterward. And the really insidious part is that it worked well enough, often enough, that I kept buying it. I'd hit a small win, feel that rush, and think, see, it works. I just need to keep going. I was mistaking the dopamine hit for actual progress. I was confusing feeling good with doing good. Let me tell you what I do now on Thursday nights. I have a different ritual. I cook dinner, something I actually enjoy making. I pour a drink, just one, and I sit down with a book. Or I work on a project. Or I call someone I care about. And it sounds boring compared to the lights and the sounds and the chaos of a casino. It is boring. But you know what else it is? Free. It costs me nothing. It leaves me better than I started. And I wake up Friday morning without any regret. I'm not special for figuring this out. I got lucky in the worst way. I got the lesson served to me on a silver platter in that back office. Most people have to learn it slowly, over years, through accumulated losses and accumulated regret. Some people never learn it. Thus, they chase that feeling until they've got nothing left to chase it with. And I have compassion for those people because I was one of them. I was one hand away from being one of them forever. You know what the woman in that office said to me that I didn't mention before? After she told me the win was void, after I asked all my questions, after it was clear I wasn't going to escalate into anything that required security, she said something that I think was meant to be comforting. She said, "Look, I know this feels unfair, but you have to understand these things happen. Machines malfunction. It's rare, but it happens. And when it does, we have to follow protocol. But you're still a valued player, and we hope you'll continue to visit us." Valued player. That phrase stuck with me. Because what she meant was valued customer. I was valuable to them as long as I kept losing. The moment I won, the moment I actually succeeded at the game they invited me to play, I became a problem. I became a liability. The entire system revealed itself in that phrase. They valued me for what I gave them, not for who I was. And the second I took more than I gave, the contract evaporated. This is the nature of every extractive relationship. They want you around as long as you're the one being extracted from. The moment the flow reverses, the rules change. And this isn't unique to casinos. This is payday loans. This is predatory credit cards. This is any business model built on exploiting people's desperation or hope or lack of information. They dress it up as opportunity. They call you valued. Inshallah, they give you a player's card with your name on it. They remember your drink order. They make you feel seen. But it's performance, it's strategy. And the second you see through it, the magic breaks. I'm telling you this story because I wish someone had told me. I wish someone had sat me down before I walked into that casino the first time and said, listen, you're about to enter a space designed by teams of psychologists and mathematicians whose only job is to separate you from your money in a way that feels fun. You will lose. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but over time you will lose. And if by some miracle you win big, there's a mechanism in place to potentially take it back. This is not a fair fight. This is not even a fight. This is you volunteering to be the product. But nobody tells you that. Instead, they tell you about their uncle who won $5,000 on a slot machine in Reno. They tell you about the time they almost hit a jackpot. They tell you to try their lucky machine, their system, their strategy. Everyone's got a story about winning. Nobody wants to talk about the math. Nobody wants to talk about the contract. Nobody wants to admit they're getting played. So I'm admitting it. I got played. For 3 years, I was a mark. I was the sucker sitting at the machine, feeding it bills, believing in patterns and luck and destiny, when really I was just a data point in their profit model. And the only reason I'm not still there, the only reason I'm talking to you now, instead of sitting at machine 73 on a Thursday night, is because they made a mistake. They showed me the truth when they took back my win. They accidentally educated me, and that education was worth more than $40,000. It was worth everything. If you take nothing else from this, take this. The house always wins. Not because they cheat, not because the games are rigged in some illegal way, but because they own the game. They write the rules. They decide what counts and what doesn't. They have lawyers and regulations and fine print and escape clauses. You have hope and a dream and maybe a system you read about online. It's not a fair fight. It was never meant to be. And if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but I'm different, I'm careful, I have discipline. I thought that too. I had rules, I had limits, I had a system, and none of it mattered because the real game wasn't the one I thought I was playing. The real game was whether I'd keep coming back. Thush! And I did. For 3 years, I came back, until they showed me why I shouldn't. So now I'm showing you. This is your moment of seeing behind the curtain. You can take it or leave it. You can keep playing. Keep hoping, keep feeding the machine. That's your right. But at least now you know what you're really playing. Not blackjack, not poker, not slots. You're playing against a system designed to extract value from your hope, and the only winning move is not to play. That's it. That's the whole story. That's the scam. And now you know.